And you also, but if you get too selfish, you start thinking about class interests or economic interests. Can that provoke violence and conflict? Okay. So these are their arguments. You know, this idea for continuity. Right? Is that clear on conservatism? I think we need to. Are we ready to move on? Is that? And just within Austria, what are the two dominant groups within the Austrian Empire? Just to sort of anticipate the future. Okay, the largest single group are the Germans, German-speaking, but they only make up about a quarter of the population, and the Magyars, okay, who are we're going to associate with Hungary. They will sort of Hungary. Again, the Magyars are again the largest central group, but again, not even a majority in the area that they tend to be most dominant. A majority of the population is a mixture of all these other groups. The problem is they're fragmented. Okay, they don't. And you also have these groups are intermixed. Even carving out independent states from the Austrian Empire will be extremely difficult because you have people who are living together. Do you guys remember, I guess it's probably, you know, ancient, but the whole breakup of Yugoslavia? Okay, and the conflicts with, you know, Serbs and, you know, in Bosnia, of Muslims and Christians had lived together, sometimes had intermarried, and then trying to separate, tremendous violence. Same thing happens with India when the Muslims in India want to create a state, a separate state of Pakistan. You have Hindus living in what will become Pakistan. You have lots of Muslims living in what will become India. And you had the forced migration of millions of people when that happened, and tremendous violence. This would also be a problem within Austria. But the Germans and the Magyars are going to seek to try to dominate the other subject minorities within Austria. Liberalism. What are the ideas of liberalism?
That foremost are the rights to property and individual rights.
Okay. Individual liberties and liberty in general. Does everybody understand? We're going to talk about sort of classical, enlightened sort of liberalism, and then there's going to be a more radical wing to liberalism that's developing. But if we start with sort of this traditional one that has been strong in Britain and France, believes in individual liberties, such as what? What are some individual liberties?
Speech,
press, assembly,
arbitrary arrest,
religion, freedom from arbitrary arrests, okay, those kinds of things. What else do they believe in? Where are those liberties often stated? Okay, there's going to be support for written constitutions. So what sort of government will this often, will the classical liberals often prefer or support?
Constitutional monarchy.
Constitutional monarchy. Now, Clay, what you were talking about, that's going to be more here, right? What's the more radical? The more radicals are other constitutional monarchy. What will they want? A republic? Okay, but what's the danger or the risk? What's the bad part of this? What is the republic associated with? Jacobins, French Revolution, war, violence, and so forth. Still seen as a little bit sort of out there. Okay, what else do liberals believe in?
Free market economy.
Okay, known as laissez-faire. And this is going to become, in a sense, the Achilles heel of classical liberalism. Why?
because it can lead to disparity and damage and harm and poverty.
Okay. There is a belief in equality, but for classical liberals, it was already mentioned, what sort of equality in the economic sphere do they believe in?
Opportunity.
Equality of opportunity, which will almost inevitably result in inequality of outcome. And because of laissez-faire, should the government or anyone else intervene to prevent that or to address that? No. And so what class does classical liberalism come to be associated with? Okay, the middle class, and increasingly now we want to be using the term the bourgeoisie. Whoops. Okay. And particularly Marx is going to use this in that lexicon of bourgeoisie and proletariat are going to come into play. But the middle class, the bourgeoisie. Okay. And what else is going to then be associated with the middle class and laissez-faire as we move through the first half of the 19th century? What's happening between 1815 and 1850?
Growth of the economy.
How? Through what? And what effect is the Industrial Revolution having? Who's benefiting and who's suffering? Okay.
But doesn't it create?
Yeah, but who's it creating most of it for?
Who's it creating it for?
Most obviously early on.
I don't understand. Who's it?
The Industrial Revolution is primarily, the initial benefits of the Industrial Revolution are going overwhelmingly to the middle class. Okay? And laissez-faire says, do we do anything to help the poor workers?
No.
Laissez-faire. Can you unionize?
Not even charity.
Can you strike? Unions and strikes are collective intervention in the free market. They violate the individual's right to work. They are forbidden by the government. For the sans-culottes and the industrial bourgeoisie, how do they view unions and collective action?
The only way to get their voice up.
And protect themselves. But laissez-faire, with laissez-faire being associated, can you see where this set of ideas, particularly because of this, is going to alienate what otherwise you would think would be natural supporters? Does that make sense? Is that clear? And so where are they going to go? And what ideas are they going to embrace?
Social.
Well, not socialism yet, but a more radical view of liberalism which believes in what? They're going to want republics. Well, politically, we need a couple of other categories. What other things politically are the liberals going to want? Besides, when you have a constitution, what else do you need in a government? What should this government also have? Okay. Representative government, but here's the key. Who is represented?
The bourgeoisie.
Why?
For the better of the people.
They're going to want to have property requirements because what is the theoretical, philosophical justification for excluding the lower classes, the poorer
They're not as
people?
educated, voting for
Because you have a land.
It's partly educated, yes,
Because
but
you have land, you have a stake in the government.
that's the key. Two things. You have to have a stake in it. If you've got nothing in the game, do you have any reason to uphold it? And if you have no property to lose, is it easy to vote for, yeah, let's have really high taxes. Let's redistribute property. That's got my vote because it's not affecting me. But what do liberals say government was established to protect? John Locke, what does he say? Life, liberty, and property. If you don't have property, not the game. The other thing, there's partly education, but there's also a really rational reason, and this was true for our American founding fathers. They were classical liberals. They were not believers in democracy. They wanted representative government, but you have to have enough property to be independent. If you are economically dependent on someone else, can you cast an independent political vote? And since women could not own property, in fact, women were